Well, good day everybody. This is Joe Van Cleve and I'm over in southeast Albuquerque at the Ernie Pyle Library. This was the first branch library in Albuquerque, and it's situated at the home of the late World War II correspondent Ernie Pyle, who lived here. He covered the Scripps Howard newspaper stories throughout the United States in the 1930s, and then he covered the war in North Africa, the Italian campaign, the Normandy landings, and then was killed in combat during the Battle of Okinawa in 1945. But this library is his former home, and today we're celebrating Ernie Pyle Days, which celebrates his birthday every year. And we have a small type-in today, and this is the first time we've done a type-in at the Ernie Pyle Library. And it's a very small venue, as you can imagine, because it's a small house, but we've brought pre-World War II, mostly portable typewriters of the kind that he might have used during his days as a reporter. Well, in preparation for the Ernie Pyle type-in, I really wanted to know a little bit more about Pyle himself. So we got a couple books. My friend Matthew, who was helping me, found a couple here. So first of all, Home Country, written by Pyle, is a collection of his writings for when he was working for the Scripps Howard newspaper in the 1930s, from like 35 through 1940. He was touring around the country writing stories about people, and this is where he earned his reputation nationally as a well-regarded reporter and writer, because he was writing about the common man oftentimes. So, Home Country, Ernie Pyle, an absolutely fantastic book. And then, Here Is Your War. This was Pyle's account of the North African War, copyright 1943. And he basically lived with the troops and moved around in North Africa during the campaign. Interestingly, my dad was in the North African campaign also. But this is a really personal account of what it was like for the soldiers fighting in that war on the American and British side. And then the next book we have is Brave Men. And Brave Men follows up from the North African campaign into the Sicily and Italy invasion, then into England and France with the Normandy invasion, and it ends in September 1944. Very interesting, powerful writings. So by September 44, Pyle was suffering from combat-related stress. He came back to Albuquerque for the rest of the year, and then he was convinced to go into the Pacific War and cover it, even though he had a premonition, actually, about it. So he went over to the Pacific War and was killed by a sniper during the Okinawa campaign in April of 45. Powerful man, and of course, he was a writer at the time using typewriters, often portable typewriters. There is a quote on a plaque that is mounted in the yard of Ernie Pyle's home, and I think it's a very powerful quote. Another man came. I think he was an officer. It was hard to tell officers from men in the dim light, for everybody was bearded and grimy. The man looked down into the dead captain's face and then spoke directly to him as though he were alive. "I'm sorry, old man." Then a soldier came and stood beside the officer and bent over, and he, too, spoke to his dead captain. Not in a whisper, but awfully tenderly, and he said, "I sure am sorry, sir." Then the first man squatted down, and he reached down and took the captain's hand, and he sat there for a full 5 minutes, holding the dead hand in his own and looking intently into the dead face. And he never uttered a sound all the time he sat there. Finally, he put the hand down. He reached over and gently straightened the points of the captain's shirt collar, and then he sort of rearranged the tattered edges of the uniform around the wound, and then he got up and walked down the road in the moonlight, all alone. From Brave Men by Ernie Pyle. So Ernie Pyle's former home is now a branch library with the Albuquerque library system, and every August 3rd they celebrate his birthday with Ernie Pyle Days. And the day that we went over there, it was the celebration of his birthday, and we had an opportunity. This was the first time that the Albuquerque Typewriter Society had been able to hold a little type-in in honor of Ernie Pyle. And so I brought, 5 pre-World War II typewriters. And then I had another pre-war typewriter, which was a Underwood 5, and I decided to bring it too because he might have used a standard-sized typewriter in the offices of the Scripps Howard newspaper, perhaps. Well, we have our typewriters laid out. We have my Underwood 5 from 1920. He didn't really use too many standard machines, but he would have probably when he worked for Scripps Howard. And this is a Remington Portable number 2. There's actually one of these in the library museum. This is indicative of the kind he might have used. We also have some reproduction prints of personal letters that Ernie Pyle had written to various people. This is from 1940, 41, and 36 when he worked at Scripps Howard. And we have a few other personal notes that Ernie Pyle typed and wrote. Over here I have my Underwood Portable from 1930. Again, the kind of typewriter that a newsman would have probably used on the road. And my Corona 3 from 1930, which I'm very proud of. And this is some U.S. Army stationery that I had printed up from some original stationery. And then this is the Royal table. We have the Royal Varsity right here from 1938, and also from 1938 the Royal Model O. So we had a small type-in in a small room, but the library staff treated us very well, and they also included a lot of other Ernie Pyle books on display that we could also check out, so that was very cool. And I did a time-lapse video of the event, and that little room got to be quite crowded at certain times as it got quite popular, and it was very fun seeing all the people come in and try out the typewriters and look at the memorabilia and the books written by Ernie Pyle. We had quite a few young kids also accompanied by their parents who tried out the typewriters, and of course I always try to give my usual little speech that nobody ever listens to, by the way, which is when a newcomer to typewriters comes in, and I want them to have a good experience, meaning that they can actually put legible inked letters on paper the first time they try the typewriter. And so I always advise them, use your index fingers. Your strong fingers, just type like that, and you'll have a good experience. And invariably, of course, they go like this, and they're not printing very darkly because they don't have the hand strength or don't know the technique. So it was fun, though, having newcomers to typewriters come in and try them out. And we look forward to participating next year in 2025 with Ernie Pyle Days.
When you're using this. Exactly, yes.
So one thing I come to appreciate when I consider reporters who worked in the field in the era of typewriters is the kind of work it took to be a good writer. Undoubtedly, Pyle, in fact, he describes it in one of his books, he certainly took notes in the field. He didn't necessarily have a typewriter at every moment when he was out in the battlefield, but he certainly took a lot of notes, carried a small notebook with him, and recorded dates and names and places and even addresses of soldiers' family back home, and interviewed soldiers and made sure that he included their names and hometowns in his writings. And then when he would get back into some field station somewhere where he has a typewriter, he would type up the report and then cable it off to his office. But it's very interesting to consider the working methodology of a writer, a roving writer back in World War II era. It's quite humbling to consider what the tools were available and the kind of skill they had to use those tools effectively compared to us today who have so many good tools, and yet the challenge always seems to be, do we have up here what it takes to be a good writer? And that's always the question I have for myself. In any event, I really appreciate all the people who helped put on the event at the Ernie Pyle Library. Thank you for Matt and Kevin and Bill of the Albuquerque Typewriter Society. It was a great event. You know, the previous video I did about how to conduct a type-in, take a look at that video. It might give you some ideas on doing your own type-in. I look forward to hearing reports of new type-ins in new places. In any event, stay creative and have yourselves a great day, and bye-bye for now.